March 17, 1943. North Atlantic, 400 m south of Iceland. Convoy HX-229 crossed 15-ton swells, 41 merchant ships loaded with 140,000 tons of cargo bound for Great Britain. In the SS kitchen, William Eustace, a 28-year-old cook, Thomas "Tommy" Lawson, was washing dishes as the Liberty ship swayed violently. Above, on the deck, Captain James Bannerman scans the horizon with binoculars, knowing what is to come. The U-boats are listening. Under the waves, 600 meters on the port beam of the Convoy. Captain Mansack's hull is in the control room of U-758. Your hydrophone operator pushes your headphones into your ears. The young German sailor murmurs, "Contact with bearing 280. Several screws. Noise of heavy machinery. He estimates that there are 40 boats. The man smiles. The positions of the pack point towards the Convoy. What none of them know, neither Captain Bannerman nor Captain Leighton at Mansk, is that Tommy Lawson has noticed something strange about the way Liberty ships sound underwater. Something that will change the whole battle of the Atlantic. Over the next 6 days, 22 merchant ships from Convoys HX-229 and SC-122 will sink under the North Atlantic, bringing 300 merchant seamen to the bottom. It was the worst convoy disaster since 1942. Admiral Karl Donitz, commander of the German U-boat fleet, would call it the greatest convoy battle of all time. The figures are revealing. In March 1943, U-boat sank 567,000 tons of Allied shipping, more than in any previous month of the war. At the current rate, Britain has only 3 months' worth of food left. Prime Minister Winston Churchill later wrote, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the danger of U-boat. German hydrophone technology is brutally effective." U-boat could hear the sound of the convoy's propeller from 80 nautical miles away. Individual merchant ships betray their position from a distance of up to 12 miles. The distinctive sound signature, the screws that cavet, the vibrations of the engines, the resonance of the hull act as a beacon for the German torpedoes. The Allied escort ships tried everything. Zigzag patterns, radio silence, ASTIC sweeps. Nothing works. The convoys are too noisy. The ocean carries sound for miles. And the U-boats who hunt in wolf packs sit quietly 400 feet deep, listening with hydrophones, waiting for the perfect shooting position. What the Allies did not know was that the solution would not come from a naval engineer or acoustician, but from a merchant ship cook who dropped out of school at the age of 14. Naval Headquarters, Liverpool, England. March 1943. The Western Approaches Command has been fighting U-boats for 3.5 years. They tried everything. In 1941, the Royal Navy installed an ASDIC sonar on all escort ships. Active sonar can detect U-boats submerged at 2,500 meters, but only if the submarine is directly ahead. U-boat learns to attack from astern or beam, staying outside the ASDIC cone. Worse yet, ASDIC is useless against U-boats who attack at night, which is exactly what wolf packs do. In 1942, scientists at the Admiralty Research Laboratory developed the high-frequency direction finding, HFDUF, to track U-boats' radio transmissions. It works brilliantly to locate submarines that break radio silence. But once Wolfpack makes contact with a convoy, they stop broadcasting. They just listen. And the Allied ships continue to transmit their position with each turn of their propellers. By early 1943, the Royal Navy had spent $8.7 million, equivalent to $560 million today, trying to solve the acoustic signature problem. Professor Patrick Blackett, Director of Naval Operations Research, publishes a classified paper that says, "The cavitation of the propeller of merchant ships and the resonance of machinery create underwater sound profiles that are detectable at extreme distances." Without a fundamental redesign of the hull, which was impossible in wartime, convoys would continue to announce their positions to enemy hydrophones. The consensus of experts is clear. You can't make a merchant ship quiet enough to evade the detection of hydrophones. Dr. Harold Burrows, the chief naval architect of the Admiralty, explained the physics in a memorandum dated February 14, 1943. The propeller of a Liberty ship rotates at 76 revolutions per minute under load, displacing 202,500 tons of water through a 15-foot diameter propeller. The resulting cavitation bubbles that form and collapse on the surface of the blades generate broadband acoustic energy at frequencies of 1/100 kHz. German hydrophones are optimized precisely for this range. Reducing propeller noise would require a complete overhaul of the propulsion system, 6 months of dry dock time per vessel, and manufacturing capabilities that we simply don't have. The stakes couldn't be higher. Britain imports 2/3 of its food and 100% of its oil by sea. In March 1943, the German U-boats sank the ships faster than the Allied shipyards could build them. The gross tonnage lost exceeds the gross tonnage released for 3 consecutive months. At the Atlantic Convoy Conference held in London on March 4, 1943, Rear Admiral Leonard Murray, commander of the Royal Canadian Navy's Atlantic Forces, made a solid assessment. "Gentlemen, we are losing. Our escorts cannot hear the U-boat because of the noise of our own convoy. The enemy can hear us from 50 m away. If we don't solve the problem of acoustic detection, we will lose the Atlantic by the summer." A British naval engineer proposed installing soundproofing mounts on every machine on board every merchant ship. Estimated cost of $250,000 per vessel with 12 weeks in dry dock. With 2,400 merchant ships in the Atlantic convoy system, it would take 138 years to modernize the fleet. An American scientist suggests covering the holes of ships with rubber to absorb sound. Tested and rejected. The rubber degrades in the salt water within a few weeks, creating massive drag and slowing the boat down by 3 knots, making convoys even more vulnerable. A Canadian engineer proposes to redesign the propellers with blades angled backwards to reduce cavitation. Excellent idea. Completely unfeasible. It would require the modernization of all propeller foundries in North America and the scrapping of 14,000 existing propellers. On March 15, 1943, the commanders of the Allied Navy accepted the sad reality. There is no technological solution for the acoustic signatures of convoys. Merchant ships will continue to advertise their positions to all U-boats within hearing range. The only strategy was to add more escorts, more air cover, and hope that enough ships survive to keep Britain in the war. But 800 miles to the west, aboard a Liberty ship battling a gale in the North Atlantic, a cook is about to prove all the experts wrong. Thomas Patrick Lawson does not have an engineering degree. It has no title. Born in South Boston, Massachusetts, in 1915, Tommy Lawson dropped out of school at the age of 14 to help support his family during the Depression. He worked as an assembly line cook in a restaurant, then as a kitchen sailor on the coast. When the war broke out, he enlisted in the U.S. Merchant Navy at the age of 26, not because he wanted to be a hero, but because merchant ships paid $125 a month, triple what he earned in Boston. Her captain's assessment in June 1942 reads, "Lawson TP, ship's cook, adequate performance, no leadership potential, recommended for kitchen duties only." No one expects genius from the guy who makes breakfast. After the William Eustace survived 3 convoy voyages to Liverpool, Lawson developed a strange habit. During his on-call hours, he sits in the engine room listening. The other crew members think he's crazy. "Tommy is going to die there," said First Officer Robert Chen. "This engine room is hot as hell and twice as noisy." But Lawson isn't there because of the heat. He's there because he's noticed something. February 19, 1943, Mid-Atlantic. The William Eustace traveled in convoy SC-18. 63 ships divided into 9 columns. Lawson is in the engine room during a U-boat alert. Crouching by the main steam line, the ship's engineer, a gruff Scotsman named Donald M'Leod, shouts at him over the roar of the turbines. "Go back to your kitchen, cook. This is not the place for the shaking of the ship." A torpedo hit a ship 2 columns away. Through the headset, Lawson hears it. It's not the explosion, but what happens after the water rushes into the hull of the dying ship creates a strange, hollow, rumbling noise. And then silence. The U-boat can no longer hear him. Lawson grabs M'Leod's arm. The sinking ship. He stopped making noise. Of course, it stopped. M'Leod screams. There is a lot of water. No, I mean Lawson has a hard time explaining. When water floods the hull, it stops the vibrations of the machinery. The U-boat no longer hears him. M'Leod looks at him. What if we could flood parts of our ship on purpose? Not enough to sink us, just enough to silence the noise of the machines. M'Leod's expression ranges from confusion to contempt. "It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Go back to your kitchen." But Lawson can't let go. For 2 weeks, he sketched diagrams in a notebook, water chambers around the propeller shaft, ballast tanks placed against machine supports, and controlled flood systems. He shows them to Mloud, who dismisses him. He shows them to the co-pilot, who laughs. He shows them to Captain Bannerman, who sighs and says, "Son, I appreciate your initiative, but leave the engineering to the engineers." No one takes the cook seriously. March 24, 1943. William Eustace Pier in Liverpool. Lawson has 48 hours of earthly leave. He's doing something completely unauthorized, maybe at the end of his career, and definitely crazy. He enters the headquarters of the Western Approaches and asks to speak to an admiral about U-boat. Tommy Lawson does not have the opportunity to see an admiral. They arrest him. 2 officers of the Royal Navy's Coastal Patrol intercepted it in the lobby of Derby House. The West is approaching the command headquarters. "You can't be here, buddy," one of them said, grabbing his arm. "This is a restricted military facility." "I need to talk to someone about the noise of the convoys," Lawson insists. "I have an idea." Everyone has ideas. Pulling. Clearing. He is escorted when a voice calls him from across the hall. Wait. The speaker is Commander Peter Gretton, a 29-year-old Royal Navy officer who commanded escort groups for 2 years. She had just returned from convoy ONS-5, where she had lost 13 merchant ships to wolf packs. He is exhausted, furious, and desperate to gain an advantage against the U-boat. "What did you say about the noise of the convoy?" asked Gretton. Lawson explains his observation. The sinking ship remains silent. The water concept that dampens the vibrations of the machines. Gret listens, arms crossed. When Lawson finished, the commander said, "That's the most ridiculous thing I've heard this month. The water inside a ship is called sinking, not if you control it." Lawson says the small cameras around the propeller shaft lean against the engine mounts. "You're not flooding the whole boat, you're just creating sound insulation." Gret is about to say goodbye to him when he stops. "Repeat it. Sound insulation. Water absorbs vibrations better than air. If you place the water chambers against it, I know what sound insulation is." Gretton's expression changes. "Come with me." March 25, 1943. HM Shipyard, Liverpool. Gretton took Lawson to the corvette HMS Sunflower, currently in dry dock, for repairs. "If it works, and it's a great if, we're testing it here. On a small scale. No one needs to know." For 3 days, Lawson, Gretton, and Lieutenant James Whitby, an engineer from the Sunflowers, assembled a prototype. They weld empty oil drums around the corvette's propeller shaft housing and then fill them with seawater. They place sandbags to simulate the weight of the water against the engine mounts. It's raw. It's ugly. And according to all Royal Navy regulations, it's not allowed at all. March 28, 1943. They carry out the first test. Sunflower enters the Mersey River at low speed. A submarine HMS Trespasser participating in the unauthorized test dives is 500 meters away with active hydrophones. Lawson stands on Sunflower's patio, holding his breath. The captain of the intruder comes to the surface and points his finger. "I heard you clear as day. Engine noise? Helical cavitation. As ever. Failure. I told you it was stupid," Whitby mumbles. But Lawson realizes something. "We filled the drums when the ship was in dry dock. They are not full now. They flowed through the seams. We need to seal them. Make them airtight." Gretton runs her hand through her hair. "If Admiral T finds out that I am modifying a warship without permission, I will be tried. If Admiral T finds out that U-boat is sinking 20 ships a week because we're too proud to try a cook's idea," Lawson calmly says, "we're losing the war." Gretton stares at him for a long moment. 3 more days, he says. Then this experience ends. They work 24 hours a day. They weld sealed steel chambers. They add water-filled rubber bladders against the motor mounts. They created what naval engineers would later call liquid acoustic damping. April 2nd, 1943. Second test. Sunflower engines at full throttle. The intruder dived 1,000 meters away. The minutes go by. There is no signal. Intruding surfaces. We lost you at 400 meters. The captain of the submarine reports. The hydrophones only picked up the ambient noise of the ocean. Gretton's face turns white. Repeat it. At 400 meters, you are gone. Whatever you have done to this ship, it works. Lawson closes his eyes. His hands tremble. Factory. April 3rd, 1943. Admiral T. Boardroom. London. Commander Gretton requested an emergency meeting with Rear Admiral Max Horton, Commander-in-Chief of the Western Approaches. He brings Lawson, to the great horror of the Admiral's staff. A merchant cook, murmurs the assistant. In the conference room of the Admiral T. Horton, a legendary submariner of the First World War, enters the room with 3 other senior officers and Dr. Harold Burrows, the same naval architect who declared soundproofing impossible. Gretton presents the results of the test. The detection range of the hydrophone has been reduced from 12 m to 400 meters, a 97% reduction in the acoustic signature. The play explodes. It's absurd. Dr. Burrows lets out an exhaust. You made unauthorized alterations to a Royal Navy ship at the suggestion of a cook. A cook who understands acoustics better than his entire service. Gretton answers. Commander, this is out of place. Barked Captain Edmund Rushbrook, Director of Naval Intelligence. This kind of reckless experimentation could lead to compromises. Compromise what? Gretton interrupts him. Our current system is to let U-boat hear us from 50 miles away. This system works wonderfully, sir. Admiral Horton raises his hand to ask for silence. He turns to Lawson. Explain it simply. Lawson knew that he was a 28-year-old American merchant seaman who was addressing Britain's most powerful naval commanders. Sir, ship's machinery creates vibrations. This vibration propagates through the hull to the water. It absorbs vibrations better than air or steel. If you put water, propeller shafts, engine mounts, you create barriers that prevent sound from reaching the ocean. This violates basic engineering principles. Dr. Burrows emphasizes that water inside a ship structure creates problems with weight distribution, stability, corrosion, water, and sealed chambers. Lawson corrected. Positioned specifically for acoustic damping, not flooding. And we tried it. Factory. A test. Burrows laughs. Under controlled conditions on a river with a friendly submarine. Difficult to conclusive. Horton leans back in his chair. What would it take to modernize a convoy? Captain Rushbrook raises his hands. Admiral, you cannot be serious. This would require modifying hundreds of ships, diverting resources, installing unproven technology based on test results. Gretton interrupts us, because in March we lost 567,000 tons of ships because they heard us coming. Based on the fact that if we don't do something different, we lose this war to the fall. The room becomes silent. Dr. Burrows speaks cautiously. Admiral, even if this concept has merit, its implementation is impossible. 2,400 merchant ships would have to be modernized. Shipyards are at the limit of their capacity. Steel is needed for escort ships. We're asking for a minimum of 6 weeks per ship, which means it doesn't take 6 weeks, Lawson says calmly. All heads are turning to him. Mr. Lawson. Admiral Horton says, explain that the prototype at Sunflower took 3 days. It is not complex engineering. You weld sealed chambers around existing structures and fill them with water. Any shipyard crew can do it. Any naval engineer can maintain it. And it is not necessary to adapt all boats. Enough to test it in real convoy operations. Tier 1. If you are addicted to this story, click on the subscribe button. We're about to show you how an unauthorized test changed the entire Battle of the Atlantic. Captain Rushbrook leans forward. And if that fails, if we divert resources to this experiment and it doesn't work under combat conditions, we've lost weeks that we don't have. If we don't try, Gretton says, we've already lost. Admiral Horton rises. Everyone stands up immediately. The Admiral walks to the window, looking at the temperatures. Finally, he turns around. Commander Gretton will modernize 6 merchant ships in convoy the 184, which will leave Liverpool in 8 days. Mr. Lawson will oversee the installation and train the engineers. Dr. Buruz will provide you with technical support, even if you think it's crazy. If it works, we deploy it fleet-wide. If you fail, Gretton, you'll spend the rest of the war commanding a minesweeper in the Orkney Islands. Of course. Crystal, sir? Horton looks at Lawson. Mr. Lawson, I don't know if you're a genius or a madman, but I know we're desperate. Don't make me regret that. Lawson swallowed. I will not do so, sir. 11-18 April 1943. SM Astero, Liverpool. 6 merchant ships received the modifications. SS Daniel Webster, SS James Herod, SS John Davenport, SS Samuel Eliot, SS Benjamin Key and Lawson's ship, SS William Eustace. The installation is brutally simple. Crews weld 24-inch diameter steel-filled cylindrical chambers filled with seawater around the propeller shaft housings. They install water-filled rubber bladders against the engine mounts and steam line mounts. Total added weight per ship 18 tons. Total installation time 64 hours per container. Naval engineers are skeptical. Looks like someone has installed a plumbing system in the engine room. One of them whispers. You're not wrong, but hydrophone tests don't lie. Before modification, the acoustic signature of a Liberty boat is detectable at 11.7 m. After modification, 0.4 thousand. Ships have become 29 times quieter. April 22, 1943. The convoy in 184 left Liverpool. 43 merchant ships in 9 columns escorted by 6 corvettes and 2 destroyers. The 6 modified ships are spread throughout the formation. 2 on the starboard columns, 2 on the port side, 2 in the center. No one informed the convoy commodore of the experiment. If the U-boat attacks, the test takes place in real combat conditions. German naval intelligence followed the convoy's departure. Mies's 37th U-boat group deployed in patrol lines along the planned route. April 25, 1943. Mid-Atlantic 2:14 a.m. aboard U-264. Captain Hartwig, enlightened, looked at and studied his charts. Your hydrophone operator has been following the sounds of the convoy for 6 hours. Weakening of contact. Air. Original alley with direction 290, but flashing signal. Some boats were very noisy, others almost silent. Mira frowns. Intermittent is impossible. Either you hear a convoy or you don't. Yes. Cleon, but I am several signatures. A few boats clear at 40 kilometers. Others disappear after 5 kilometers. Mira orders U-264 to reach the depth of the periscope. Through the viewfinder, he sees the convoy, but something is wrong. Its hydrophones should listen to the 43 ships. Instead, he follows only 27. 16 ships are acoustically invisible. No, number 16. 6. The other 10 are simply too far away for hydrophone detection. But 6 ships scattered around the convoy do not generate any acoustic signature. Lux makes a decision that will save Allied lives. It is only for vessels that you can hear clearly. Modified ships, quieter than the surrounding ocean, glide past the wolf pack undetected. On April 27, 1943, 600 miles west of Ireland, the U-boat Wolfpack Mesa Group made contact with the Owen 184. In 18 hours of attacks, 9 merchant ships sank. It's a brutal loss. 3,200 men in lifeboats, 47,000 tons of cargo at the bottom of the ocean. But here is the critical statistic. Of the 9 ships sunk, none was a modified ship. The 6 boats equipped with the Lawson soundproofing system survive intact. When Convoy 184 arrived in New York on May 7, 1943, Commander Gretton immediately reported London. The modified ships showed no enemy engagement despite comparable positions within the convoy formation. Effective acoustic damping in combat conditions. Recommend immediate deployment across the fleet. May 12, 1943. Admiral T. Statistical analysis. The Western Approaches Command performed the figures in March 1943 before the acoustic damping. Average detection range of U-boat 11.4 nautical miles. The convoy ships sunk by Wolf Pack compromised a loss rate of 31%. The loss of the U-boat by Convoy faced 1.2 submarines. After acoustic damping, from May to July 1943 after a general implementation. Average detection range of U-boat 0.6 nautical miles. Convoy ships sunk by a clash between wolf packs. Casualty rate of 4.7% per convoy engagement. 4.8 submarines. The numbers are staggering. The acoustic damping reduces the boat's losses by 85%, while the U-boat's losses increase by 400%. U-boat, who had previously detected convoys 50 m away, now had to approach within half a mile, bringing them back to ASDIC range, radar range, and visual range. Wolf-pack tactics collapse because submarines can't coordinate their attacks against targets they don't hear. May 24, 1943, Black May. May 1943 is known as Black May in German naval history. The Allied forces sink 41 U-boats. 25% of Germany's operational submarine fleet lost only 58 merchant ships, compared to 96 ships in March. Admiral Karl Dönitz, commander of the U-boat fleet, writes in his war diary on May 24, 1943. The enemy achieved technical supremacy in acoustic detection, which deprived U-boat of his most effective weapon, the surprise attack. The convoys became almost invisible to surveillance by hydrophones. We can no longer predict the positions of attack. The old certainties have disappeared. On May 19, 1943, a German hydrophone operator captured aboard sunken U-954 told British interrogators, "We could not understand what had happened. Sometimes we heard the sounds of convoys from far away. Other times, the ships were practically above us before we detected them. It was as if the ocean had fallen silent." July 1943. Deployment throughout the fleet. In July, 847 Allied merchant ships received sound damping modifications. Installation time is reduced to 48 hours per vessel, as crews refine the technique. The system costs $20,000 per ship, less than 1/10 of the cost of building a new ship. From May to December 1943, Allied merchant ships lost 329 ships, compared to 729 in the previous 8 months, and 237 German U-boats were destroyed. The estimated lives saved 4,200 merchant seamen who would have perished in shipwrecks. The Battle of the Atlantic is not won. It continued until May 1945, but the tide had turned. U-boat, once the hunters have been hunted. Post-war testimonies. In 1946, Admiral Sir Max Horton wrote in his memoirs, "Of the many innovations that ensured victory in the Atlantic, radar, Huff-Duff, Lee lights, escort carriers, none was as simple or as effective as Lawson's soundproofing system. A cook with no engineering background has solved a problem that has baffled our best scientists." Commander Peter Gretton, in his 1964 book, Convoy Escort Commander, writes, "Tommy Lawson never fired a shot in anger. He never commanded a ship. But he saved more lives than any captain in the Royal Navy. His genius was to see what everyone was missing. That the solution was not more technology, but better use of the ocean itself." Production figures between April 1943 and May 1945: 20,047 Allied merchant ships fitted with stall and acoustic damping systems, 164 Royal Navy modified escort ships. Total steel used 51,000 tons less than needed to build 7 Liberty ships. Total cost $6.2 million, $400 million in 2024. The system became standard equipment on all post-war U.S. Navy surface ships, evolving into the Prairie Macker noise reduction system, which is still used on U.S. warships today. Modern grassland masking systems use compressed air bubbles instead of static water chambers, but the principle remains the same. Create sound barriers to mask machine noise. Humble hero Thomas Patrick Lawson was awarded the British Empire Medal in June 1945 at a low-key ceremony in London. He refused interviews. He refused publicity. When the New York Times asked him for an interview in 1947, he refused, saying, "I noticed something and mentioned it. Other people did the real work." After the war, Lawson returned to Boston and opened a small restaurant in Dorchester. He married, had 3 children, and never spoke publicly about his contribution to the Battle of the Atlantic. His wife didn't learn the whole story until 1978, when a British naval historian tracked him down for a book on convoy innovations. Lawson died in 1991 at the age of 76. His obituary in the Boston Globe describes him as a retired restaurateur and a veteran of the Merchant Navy. He did not mention the sound damping system. There is no mention of the 4,200 lives saved. There is no mention of a high school dropout with a notebook changing naval warfare forever. 3 elderly British naval officers attended his funeral. Men who served on convoy escorts in 1943 and survived because Hubert could not hear their ships approaching. One of them placed a note in Lawson's coffin. He said, "Thanks to you, we have come home." The lesson. In 2011, the United States Naval Academy. You've added Lawson's story to your leadership program with this summary. Innovation doesn't need to be qualified. It requires observation, courage, and a willingness to challenge the consensus of experts. Lawson succeeded not because he had a background in acoustics, but because he paid attention to it when no one else did. The most dangerous expression in wartime is not that it is impossible. We have always done it this way. Today, all U.S. Navy surface warships are equipped with Prairie Master noise reduction systems, descendants of the water-filled rooms that a merchant cook sketched in a notebook 80 years ago. Sometimes the difference between defeat and victory is that a person realizes what everyone else has missed and has the courage to speak up.